Jane,
Hello.
welcome to Beyond the Boardroom.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on. You are quite something. Shall I list all these accolades? Right. You're the founder of Red Wolf Technologies Limited. You are the co-founder and CEO of Novella Healthcare. You are also the co-chair for APSCO's, I hope I'm saying that correctly, clinical and healthcare sector. You've also been a director of several companies. You are a motivational speaker. You're also a mum. And you're also, from what I've seen so far, a very lovely person. Does that sum up the... do you?
I guess so. It's yeah.
Yeah, these
reads well.
These are pretty significant achievements. It's pretty cool, to have all of that and be like, look, I'm the founder of these businesses. I've done this. I've done that. You're clearly pretty entrepreneurial. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think I just get excited about things.
You like business.
Yeah.
You're doing stuff.
Yeah.
You're making the effort.
Yeah.
And I would say you've achieved a decent amount of success. However, your journey to get to this point has been pretty tough, to say the least. And it included drug abuse and alcohol abuse and mental health struggles. It's not been easy for you. I'm thrilled to have you on. You're very brave to come on and share this journey with us. And I suppose first question, what I want to know is, why did you feel it's important to share your journey with us?
I have tried to share as much as I'm comfortable with, I suppose, for a little while now. I was asked to speak in a school to begin with, going back 7 or 8 years by a friend who knew my story and asked to speak. And at the time, I said no instantly and thought that was a silly idea.
Didn't want to do it, yeah.
Yeah, and who would want to listen to my story? Lots of people have tough stories and tough backgrounds, and just didn't see myself as that person really. But she talked me into it, and I'm glad she did. And it made me realise how much young people these days, and all people, but particularly young people, are struggling with life and mental health battles, and could see that it had helped maybe just 1 or 2 people in that room, and that made it worth getting a little bit uncomfortable for and doing it again and again.
Yeah. I mean, this podcast, we cover, there's lots of things we cover, but I suppose the central theme to what encapsulates what this podcast is about, it's like it's an inner confidence, to go for stuff in business, but also in your personal life, to overcome challenges, to achieve things, to, I suppose, fight your inner demons, to whatever it is, fight the laziness or fight the temptations, whatever it may be. It's kind of like working through that to be confident enough to take charge of your life and go forward. So I feel you're very well placed to be on this podcast, and lots of people, as you say, are struggling with these issues. Yeah. And I just want to have a conversation with you about it.
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like your story is crazy. Like, it's mad.
It's colourful.
It's a very colourful story.
Yeah.
It's good you're wearing red.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So first of all, did you grow up in Glasgow?
No, I grew up in Bolton.
You grew up in Bolton? Because I say you don't have a...
No.
Scottish. No. So what's the Glasgow connection?
I went to university in Glasgow. I wanted to study forensics, and that was the best place.
Forensics?
Yes. I always do everything to fairly Olympic standards. So I searched where the best place was to do it and went to Glasgow.
That's okay. Forensics is... I haven't heard that on the podcast. That's something.
Yeah.
And then you moved to...
when I finished at Glasgow,
Manchester.
I moved back down. I moved home to Bolton and lasted maybe 8 weeks. I think once you've come away from living at home, it's hard to go back, isn't it? And quickly moved to a flat in Manchester with friends.
So what led you to move to Manchester? What was the idea of Manchester?
It just happened, if I'm honest. There was nothing too purposeful at that point. I took a break from forensics. I'd been studying. I'd had a bit of a tough time at university with a couple of things that happened, and I just decided to get a job. I got a job on 12 grand in a call centre at Bupa. And it just was to kind of fill a gap to begin with while I worked out what I did, and then things just went from there.
What was it at uni that was tough? What was it?
I think looking back that I already struggled with mental health. I think depression had kicked in by the time I was a teenager, really, and struggled through school, got to university and struggled more, and then one of my close friends from home died in a car accident. And that was really tough to deal with at that age. You know, we were 20 and going on nights out, and all of a sudden that was
really affected you.
Yeah, I think.
So you already felt sort of depressed and sad. Was there any reason that you were feeling? I guess, did you know what was causing the sadness, or did you?
No, I didn't at the time. I mean, looking back, I think just not fitting in and not feeling a part of the world.
Yeah.
I'm in a civil partnership. I'm gay. I now happily married to a woman, but to grow up in the 80s and 90s and to be a gay person walking in this world was not an easy one. It wasn't something people spoke about, and is still more difficult these days.
So you didn't talk about it at that?
No, I wouldn't even admit it to myself. I still tried to date boys and tried to be somebody that I wasn't, which is incredibly uncomfortable and is damaging to mental health. It takes its toll after a time.
That is uncomfortable because you're walking around, you're not being true to yourself, and it's going to affect every single response to everything that you encounter.
Your internal message is that you're not good enough, you don't fit in, you there's something wrong with you, all those things. And insults are still used on the playground around being gay. It's still used as an insult, particularly amongst lads, and it's
so do
thrown
people
around.
At school, did you get bullied in that way? But you concealed it, so you didn't.
not for being gay, but I was a tomboy. All I wanted to do was play football. Girls weren't allowed to play football.
No.
I just certainly didn't fit into the in crowd. If if
but it's so
still
fun
such
playing
a
football.
Thing. I know, yeah. I mean,
so
now I really enjoy it,
sitting.
and it's great, and it's For some of my closest friends have come from football, and
that's right.
and that's incredible. But at the time, I was told I wasn't allowed to play. That was wrong. There were so many things that told you subtly that it was wrong. It wasn't that anybody ever told me, you can't be gay, because I didn't tell anybody that I was. I didn't tell myself I was.
Not your parents. You didn't have anyone.
No, we never had a conversation.
No friends to disclose that to you. Didn't want to.
I don't think in those days people did anyway. Yeah. I just don't think they did. I think it is different now and it's better, but we're still not there. The only people that think it's probably okay to be gay and there's nothing different these days than there was is straight people. There's still very much, an underlying tone in society that it's still not quite there.
So you've gone to Manchester, and then what was it about the scene, sort of the clubs, the social circles, the bars that kind of drew you into that sort of world?
I don't know, really. I mean, I enjoyed going out. I think most people did at that age, and I'd gone from not fitting in at school and not really having friends and being quite a loner to all of a sudden finding people that I enjoyed spending time with, and we had a good time. And I lived with a girl who we were incredibly close very, very quickly and shared a bond, and I just enjoyed it to an extent, but I still, for that first year or two of being in Manchester, was trying to date boys and be somebody that I wasn't.
Okay, so you've got a friend now, you're living together. Were you living together at the time? And you're going out and you're partying and you're sort of enjoying it and sort of getting into that whole thing. I had someone on the podcast last week that was saying that it's just something you fall into, isn't it? It's a whole club scene and everyone's going out and everyone's partying and stuff.
Yeah, it sounds bizarre now looking back, but she was a model and moved in circles where it meant we were going to Man United football dues and
proper.
Big celebrities that people knew, and we were, we would always get into any of those clubs because of who she knew and her modelling and things like that, and living a life that most people would have thought was just wonderful,
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to live that life at that age? That it was great to an extent, But I think behind the scenes, I still was struggling.
Yeah, so you still felt something inside you, not quite right, but to the outside world, you're partying, you're actually, you're enjoying this lifestyle because that's sort of what's going on. That's the theme of the...
Yeah, I had some really good friends from sixth form college and Bolton, and I kind of lost touch with them because I was trying to pretend to myself and everybody else that I was having this great time, and they genuinely thought that I was doing. And a couple of years later, when it all came tumbling down, and one of the first things I needed to do was to reach out to people that I knew would just be there.
Yeah,
they just couldn't believe that I'd gone through all of this for a few years without knowing. They just thought I was having this great time. Remember, there was no social media then.
Yeah,
we're talking 2001 to 2005-ish, and the odd time I spoke to them, which was very rare, they just thought I was having this great time.
Yeah, so you sort of drifted away from them a little bit, and you're drifting into this world.
Gap between a lot of people.
And in this world, you've got these big celebrity parties that you're going to. It's really fun. It's madness. It's all those shiny, lovely things, and that includes drugs and alcohol, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So when did you first try drugs?
Probably a few months into that scene. It was just readily available, as I'm sure it is these days still. I don't know. A long way away from it now, but I think it was so
apparently
readily available. Yeah. Now, obviously, I just think about my kids and how
terrified. Now you,
I wish I didn't know.
Actually,
what
you're
I'd
a great,
done, but,
you're a great mum, because you're going to be like,
we'll spot it quite easily.
You're going to know.
And it was just readily available, and I think because
scary.
You say that these nights were great fun, but actually, I was stood in those rooms with, I think, call it what you want, imposter syndrome or whatever else we call all these feelings. I didn't feel like I fit in any way. I wasn't a celebrity. I didn't feel like I looked the part. I didn't, I was gay and nobody knew it. I was there pretending, flirting with men, which is really uncomfortable for me, and so did I have fun? I don't know. I played a part well.
That must be really difficult because you're flirting with these guys and you're not fancying them at all. It must be just the difficult thing.
I think you train to ignore that feeling inside of butterflies and that little feeling in your tummy when you're attracted to somebody that's lovely, and everybody has a right to have that feeling, and I didn't, because for all those years when everybody else was having all those exciting feelings and and enjoying those first dates and everything, I was pushing all of that down, thinking, or trying to convince myself it was something else, and going on dates with guys and thinking I must be attracted to this guy because he's attractive, right? Or I must be attracted to this guy because all the other girls are, so he's attractive, so therefore I must date him. And
you can't pretend.
To think I was 22 before
that's tough.
I admitted first having feelings for a girl. That's a...
So which girl was that?
Long time. Well, I'm going to protect her privacy here.
Okay. No, don't say her name, but which was it, the girl that you were staying with?
Yes, yeah. And do you know what? You couldn't ask for a better response. She just kind of went, everybody falls in love with me. Why don't we just go out and see what other girls you're attracted to? Yeah, chill. And I thought my world would end,
Yeah.
I thought this was it, my world would end.
Yeah.
And she got me to go and sit down with my mum and go back to Bolton and chat with friends. And, she was incredible.
How was that for you, going to your mum and your friends?
Hard and yet lovely as well, because, those friends I've got from Bolton are proper friends. I grew up with them to an extent. Most of them I met at sixth form. As I say, school wasn't a great time, but at sixth form I made some friends that are just down to earth people. They're just authentic, genuinely good people, and they were just upset that I'd not been able to talk to them, or that I thought they would see me any other way, and I didn't necessarily. I don't think it was as much about them as it was about me accepting things.
Yeah, that's right. You have to accept yourself.
Yeah.
But did they suspect anything like that? They think, come on,
Oh, yeah, I don't think they were surprised.
Yeah.
I just don't think they'd overthought about it either, because it's not a big deal to anybody else.
Yeah.
And it isn't.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't see is if I walk down the street and hold hands with my partner, people take a second look sometimes. They're not being nasty. They're not being difficult, or they're not. But yeah, it's different. So they take a second look. I don't want that second look. I get embarrassed, or I get uncomfortable, or I just want to
even now
go through life. Yeah, without the second look. Yeah, even now. Less so maybe than 20 years ago, but still.
Well, hopefully coming on this podcast will help the second look stop its rude.
Yeah, people aren't meaning to be rude, are they? I think we all have second look at stuff.
It's staring. Some cultures, they just stare. I mean, I'm Polish, but in Poland, Polish people love to stare. Like you sit, in an airport.
Yeah. And we're still in a world where it's illegal to be gay in some countries.
Yeah.
When me and my we have 2 children together, 2 beautiful children. We're very blessed. We've had IVF, and we have this lovely family, and we're the only gay family in our school, in our primary school of however many hundreds of children, and we know that if we travel, I am conscious of where we travel, because I don't want my children to be intimidated or to realise that actually they're still young, they're 9 and 6, and that's young to know that there's some hatred out there, and there's some...
dangerous.
Absolutely. And, I've experienced it when I've travelled, and I choose not to put myself in those situations with children.
Yeah, it's a high-stress, dangerous environment. You're already going through enough. You've got to be true to yourself, and you can't be putting yourself and your family in a dangerous situation where you have to overcome all of that when you're still trying to.
Yeah, absolutely. But equally, we choose to not. That doesn't define who we are. We're just a normal family. There's love, there's laughter, there's this incredible want to do right by our children, and for them to enjoy life and make the most of every moment.
It becomes about the kids. It becomes more than. Your life becomes so secondary, tertiary, whatever you want to call it. It just isn't the main thing, is it?
No, we've started by speaking about this, but actually it doesn't really come up day to day for me anymore. I don't talk about it. I don't tend to think about it too much, because it's I dealt with it a long time ago, and I've accepted the world as it is, and just tried to make the most of the world as it is, which we're all doing. We all have reasons that we perhaps feel we don't fit into the world, so it's no different.
It's also important, I feel like, when you talk about these things, you get to understand someone. You get to connect, you get to feel what's going on in their heart and their soul. And when you communicate, you just understand, and you're more accepting of things. I think the public become more accepting when they understand these things on a deeper level, like what you go through, the feelings, the rejection, the acceptance, the fear, the danger. I feel like that's all pretty important to hear. I know it's uncomfortable, possibly to you. The last thing you want is to be talking about it, but it's like, should we be talking about it,
Yeah, I think so. And I think what's important is that, in the years that when it tumbled really, which I'm sure we'll come on to from going to these parties and then into this world of drink and drugs that became less savoury, I suppose. And I was unkind in some of those times, and I was not a nice person in some of those moments, and I did things that now I'm ashamed of to some extent. I've forgiven myself, but I wouldn't ever do again. And when I see people that are sometimes acting in an unkind way, or I remember that I was sometimes that person, and all I needed was kindness. And it's so hard, isn't it? Because if somebody's attacking you in any way, or being difficult to be around, or being unkind and being mean, or just being a not very nice person, with attitude and anything else, it's not easy to be around. And why should you be kind to them if they haven't been? But actually, I think a lot of people just need kindness, because underneath it probably comes from a place of hurt. And there's something they're fighting there. Yeah.
And it can't be easy. So what was that experience like? You took drugs for the first time. What was that like? So you're actually quite older now.
22.
22, okay.
23.
And that's the first time?
Yeah, I'd
who gave you these?
A lot.
I mean, don't say name, but obviously, was it in the club? It's just in the club.
Yeah, and in bars, and people that would come back to our apartment, or we'd go back to theirs, and I think.
Did you not were you terrified the first time you saw the drugs? You thought, oh, that's drugs. Oh my God, yeah.
No, I mean, I drank quite a lot, and you and I think it just gradually came into my awareness that drugs were around, and that just became more
normal.
Yeah, things do become normal even when they're not to everybody else in your world. If they're around all the time, then it gradually becomes normal. There's no point where I can remember thinking I'm going to do this now. I don't remember the first time I did it or made the decision to.
You just sort of blended with, so you were, drinking, going out, so obviously inhibitions are down anyway.
Yeah.
The drugs are there, people are trying it. Did your flatmates obviously trying it as well?
No.
She didn't?
No. It was just me. She didn't need to. I think for me, drink and drugs were an escape for me by that point. And when depression is quite bad, it's escape. Anything that feels consciously, anything.
You made the choice to take them. Basically, you wanted to.
I can't remember a conscious choice.
Yeah.
But I would have done anything to escape. And I think you've got to remember that things happen gradually, don't they? So there's not for me anyway. There was never a moment until further in the journey when there was moments that I wanted things to end. But in the lead up to that, it was just that I started to care less about being here. That perhaps I didn't mind whether I was here or not. I know that sounds a silly thing to say. It's the best way I can describe
it's quite hardcore.
I was feeling that. Yeah. But
so you weren't very kind to your body. You were like...
No, and put myself in situations that were dangerous. And
it happens.
Yeah.
You didn't really...
Yeah, and it's funny because the less you care about being here, the more confident you become, in going into those situations, because you're like, well, I don't care if I get hurt. I don't care if such a thing happens.
So at this point, if they're passing around all these different drugs, you're probably not even that interested in maybe what's, you're not going to be like, what exactly is in this? How is it? You're just sort of like, who cares? And this is all messing with your mind, and it's chemicals and it's the alcohol, and it's all going.
Yeah, and the thing with some drugs and alcohol is it makes you feel better in that moment. It makes you feel more confident. I suppose it depends which drug you take. I'm not very experienced in a lot of drugs, but for a moment it makes you feel better. And I think when you've got depression and you just feel dark and nothing for so much of the time, that feeling something can be better than feeling nothing for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes me to the whole Liam Payne thing, doesn't it? You heard about Liam Payne from 1D. It's like, you sort of think for someone on the outside looking, you think, but why did you take this stuff? Like, why did you do that? No, stop. Yeah. Like, why would you do that? Clearly it's going to be dangerous. Clearly you're going to be out of control. Why would you waste your beautiful life? You're a star, you're this. Why would you do it? Like, what is going on? Surely you can just say no to that.
Yeah.
Surely.
It just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. Why do you want to if you don't care? And if I don't know the guy, it's different for everybody, isn't it? But that could have easily been me. I could have fallen off a balcony. I could have, been run over. I could have done lots of things. And I'm lucky that I'm still here and those things didn't happen. But I think certainly I put myself in. I
think what I'm getting from you, I think it's shocking in a way, but it's like you didn't care that the drugs were harming you. You were okay to hurt your body in that way. You were okay to do that. To an
extent, felt I deserved it. By that time, didn't believe I was that nice a person.
Tough.
So yeah.
You're giving up on yourself in a way.
Yeah.
And the drugs are shielding you, and the alcohol sort of protecting you in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So you're in this world, you're doing that, it's sort of building up now. So at what point did you realise that this, the drugs and alcohol are becoming a problem now?
Well, at this point, I'd myself and my friend kind of had gone slightly separate ways. She'd met a guy, at one of these parties we'd been to, who she's married to now, has children with, and is still an incredible friend.
Lovely.
And so she'd kind of moved in with him, and so I had this apartment and all this kind of time, and I got into another relationship with a woman for the first time. And I think I just had the freedom to take even more, because there was nobody around really to go, come on now,
So the fact that you were with a woman now, another woman, and you thought, like, did that not make you feel better now that you can sort of be more yourself, be more? Did this not feel like you want to stop the drugs completely?
No, because that relationship wasn't very healthy. Look, when you're not healthy and things aren't going well, you're not attracted to healthy environments.
No.
So that relationship, she, was with a guy, hadn't come to terms with any feelings that she had towards me. So I think that's
not a
fairly
healthy
textbook,
relationship,
isn't it? That we get into the really unhealthy. You just bounce from one unhealthy thing to another, don't you? When you're feeling that low about yourself, and things kind of got worse.
And you were noticing now, I'm taking more drugs, I'm getting more out of control.
Yeah. I was by this point having, I'd been to the doctors for depression. I'd recognised that it perhaps wasn't normal how I felt about not wanting to get up in the morning, struggling just to get to work. I look back, I don't know how I kept a job, to be honest. I don't know why they kept me in a job. I don't think I was there very much, but I think I just got away with it because I was always quite capable. I was always quite academic.
So how many drugs and things were you doing at this stage, and alcohol? Was it just on more party at night time?
Yeah, so probably from kind of Thursday through to Monday, which is most of your week, isn't it?
That's what on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll have a break on Monday.
Looking at that. It's a little bit crazy, like now when people say they're going to eat healthy and and then they get to Thursday and they're like, well, it's nearly weekend, isn't it? And I'll have a treat, and then that goes through to Monday, and I'm like, well, that's just your whole week, isn't it? Thursday to Monday.
Well, to recover then Monday to Wednesday.
Yeah, I'd tried antidepressants on and off, a kind of half-hearted attempt. I'd been referred for counselling. I'd gone to a counsellor. Didn't really engage with any counsellors. I didn't think very much of the first few that I met. But then I met this woman who was a clinical psychologist. Looking back, they obviously felt I needed deeper help because it went from a counsellor at some point to a clinical psychologist and a psychiatrist. That was in the private. And I was very lucky because I was working at Bupa, and Bupa in those days, as an employee, you had private cover. Yeah. So I kind of got pushed into this world of psychiatrists and clinical psychologists, and I met the most wonderful psychologist who I still have contact with to this day. And she absolutely helped in me taking a different path in this world. I don't know what would have happened had I not met her, and perhaps there'd have been another clinical psychologist come along, but she had a way with me that other people hadn't before. She managed to touch something.
So just in terms of timelines, so you got into this turbulent relationship with this other woman. It's not working out. She's not quite there. It's actually destabilizing you.
Yes.
You're continuing with the drugs and alcohol on, for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then sort of recovering and just about going to work. Do you then decide, I've got a problem? Do you then see the clinical psychologist?
No,
what happens?
That had already started, I think.
So you were already seeing,
clinical psychologist, and starting to go. And then I realised...
You went to the Priory?
Yeah, I was weekly at these outpatient appointments with the clinical psychologist, and they kind of continued, but it got to a point where, I got to 20, I was around 25, it was 2005, and just didn't want to be here. I just didn't. I'd have turned the lights off. If it was as easy as a light switch, I'd have switched it off. But it's not as easy as a light switch, fortunately. And that year was tough.
Just I can't even, how do you get to the point that you decide I don't want to be here? That's...
Yeah, and I think what's most shocking for me now looking back is that I had a loving family, I have a loving family. I have a mum, my dad who's not with me now, but grandparents, aunties, uncles, siblings.
Friends as well.
Yeah, and friends.
But you're alone,
Yeah, very alone, and couldn't bear to tell them what was really going on.
So if you're not talking to them because they're further away, you're just not connecting with that. So the people you've got around you at this point, how are they impacting you?
Well, by that point, the only people that I had around me really were people that were drinking and taking drugs and were just coming along for the ride,
Right. That's really not
surround
helpful.
yourself with the people that are just in it for the... I was probably quite entertaining in those days when we went out. You've got a front on, you have a great night out.
Were you being yourself at this stage-ish? Were you sort of, is it part, or were you being genuine to yourself?
No, To an extent, yeah. You know, I had some great times as well. There were some of those friends that we had great nights out. We had great fun, but did it extend into anything deeper or more of a connection? Not really. I had a couple of friends that I'd met at Bupa who did turn out to be the best of friends and sat with me, you know, by the time I was in the Priory, came and sat while I rocked in a corner, you know, would sit quietly with me while I couldn't get out a darkened room and would just sit there. And even when I tried to push them away, because I did, you know, because I tried to push everybody away, it's self-destruction, isn't it? You know, you're just on self-destruct, so that includes drink, drugs, pushing people away, everything.
Did the Priory help you to not want the drink and drugs anymore? Did it work in that sense?
Yeah, it did. It gave me a break from life, you know, from the pressure of trying to be something else, somebody else, from the pressure of everything, from relationships, from work, from, I don't know, just life. You're in a bubble and you're with other people that are at least as poorly as you.
Yeah, so what year? So you were in the Priory, when was that? What year?
2005 Christmas
2005.
into the new year, over the Christmas period and into the new year.
Gosh, you know, I used to walk past the Priory sometimes. I lived in Southgate.
Okay.
And I sometimes go past and I said, what's that? And my husband, and he sort of explained it to me, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. It seemed like a very peaceful, beautiful,
it is very peaceful. And
place.
Big
trees. And
I mean, I was at one in the north, and same, beautiful old building, very peaceful. And I'd been there for sessions, a lot of sessions by this point. You know, becoming an inpatient was almost just a next step. You know, from being an outpatient. You had
accepted that I knew
the
going
surroundings.
To this place.
I accepted it. I remember the woman on reception looking at me as if I was mad, which I kind of was to be there in the first place. I handed my car keys to her, and she was like, "Have you driven yourself here?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. You know, I've agreed to be here.
I'm
so,
here.
You know, here I am."
No, I suppose it's disciplined of you. You know, even though your life's pretty turbulent, there's a level of discipline that you're showing there. So you're getting the treatment, you're coming in, you're still seeing you've got these friends, you're sort of getting tempted in. What happens next?
I had that few weeks at the Priory, and when I came out, I just felt like I'd had a real break, and that I didn't think that life would perhaps change massively for me, that I was just a little bit stronger to be able to cope with it. And, you know, I'd started to... I always did exercise and things, but I'd not done for a few years, and I was trying to do a little bit of exercise again. I was just trying a little bit harder, shall we? Just a few little
trying
things,
a bit harder.
You know?
Okay,
I was trying a few little things, but life quickly turned for me. Then I'd reached that point of being in the Priory over 2005 Christmas and New Year, and then my dad suddenly passed away in March 2006, and that was it. That was the point.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So that threw you through the whole healing out the window, basically. That was it.
Yes and no. Everything just changed. You know, I mean, even today, I think there was life before my dad died and there's life after. It's very different. I was a daddy's girl. I always was. You know, I adored him. He was my hero. I loved him unconditionally. We had a connection that anybody that knew us knew we just had this connection. And even when I was poorly, and even when, you know, my mum loves me unconditionally and you know, now is incredibly proud of me. With my dad, there was just something a little bit deeper. Like I could look at him and I know what he was thinking, and he knew what I was thinking. I didn't have to say anything.
Daddy's little girl, yeah.
And when I was really poorly, I got home one day from I think about a 3-day bender, and he was sat on the doorstep with, it was a magic hat. When I was a little girl, I used to have nightmares, and my dad used to put this sun hat on me and tell me it was magic, and my nightmares used to go away. And I got home and he was sat there and he'd kept it.
Oh, that's so cute.
And I don't know how long he'd been sat there. He just said, I just knew, you know, I needed to come.
God. Oh, God, that's lovely.
So, you know, he never judged, my dad. He never, when I told him that I was gay, I might as well have just told him I'd had spaghetti for tea.
Couldn't care less.
You know, he didn't care. You know, he was very forward thinking, and he just had no judgment of anybody. He was a very gentle character.
Well, he loved you So that's it.
Yeah, and
there's
he
no
listened.
there's no other anything else.
So,
But that must have been damn awful. Yeah. That's a knife in the heart. Yeah.
Not the one, because I did have other family that desperately tried to be there for me. I didn't let them. You know, I didn't let my mum. I didn't let my auntie, who I'm very close to. There were lots of people. I didn't let anybody else. Whereas my dad never tried. He just kind of potted around and was just there gently, you know. And then all of a sudden he wasn't. And that it wasn't that my healing stopped. It was almost like my healing started, which I know sounds odd.
Okay, what happened then?
Well, look, we all have different beliefs, don't we, about the world that we live in and about spiritual beliefs and things like that. And maybe I was already open to some extent around spiritual beliefs, but I believe that my dad came to see me that night, which may sound crazy to a lot of people. I don't think it really matters. It helped me, and I just felt something different. I think one was that I couldn't let my dad see me doing those things anymore. All of a sudden I had this belief that he could still see me, I just couldn't see him.
Which thing? So what's the worst thing that you didn't want your dad to see about you?
Well, I didn't want him to see me drinking and taking drugs. I didn't want him to see me. It really hurt my dad when I was hurting. You know that E.T. film? when the boy's hurting and E.T. hurts?
Yeah.
That's the closest I can describe it. And it is for anybody. We all understand that's why the film was so successful. We all understand that bond. It's like now with my children. If they hurt, I hurt 10 times as much. You know, and my dad, I could see the pain on his face even when he pretended to be okay. The day that I went and told him that I was going to go into the Priory for a few weeks to take a break, I'll never forget the look on his face. And it wasn't disappointment. It was just sadness.
So at this point with your dad passing, had you, in terms of your experience and the drugs and you said you didn't want to be here, had you by this point reached what you would consider your sort of rock bottom in life?
Yes. Yeah. I had by that point, I think on paper they were classed as 3, I don't like to say suicide attempts. I think that's what doctors or the Priory would have kind of referred to them as. I'm not sure it's that easy to label these things. But there were 3 events where I'd, really put myself in harm's way and not wanted to be here by the time I went into the Priory, which is why I agreed to it, because I knew each time it was going to get worse. So, yeah, I'd reached that point and I just couldn't bear my dad seeing that or that look on his face to be the one that I was left
Did he
with.
know about these 3 attempts, what you did?
No.
You didn't?
No, none of my family do. I've never spoken to them about it to this day. Okay. I shan't be posting this podcast anywhere where family members will see because I think it's too painful for them. Yeah, I don't think they need to. I don't think there's any value in them knowing those things now. They loved me, I just didn't let them at that by that time.
And your dad didn't know that, sorry, just to...
No. I think he just knew from the connection that we had how much pain I was in, and that hurt him.
But you knew, obviously, and the Priory knew.
Yes.
And we won't go into that. I can tell you'd rather not. So, but all of that is in your mind, and you're thinking, I just don't want to disappoint him. Is that what you're thinking?
I couldn't bear, that look that he had on his face when I told him I was going in, that look of sadness. Whenever I thought about doing something that potentially could lead to self-harm, I just saw that look and I thought, I can't bear that. I can't do that. And all he would want and all I can do for him now is get better. It's all I can do. He was so, he used to say I could do anything, and that's...
It's incredible because it's like he's looking out for you still, isn't he? And in his death, he's become like your guardian angel, and he's your motivation now to steer you away from all that world, that stuff,
Yeah. And even now, if I deal with we still deal with difficult things all the time, don't we? Life carries on, and even though life might look on the surface like it's all wonderful now, I still deal with stuff, you know, all do.
Of course.
And I still have little things that my dad would have said to me that I go, oh, that's what he meant, you know? So when we're parenting, and I now parent my children, I hope that they remember some things that, even though, like, I might have said something to my son yesterday who's 9 and it went over his head and he just asked me what was for tea, maybe at some point further down the line he'll go, that's what mum meant, you know, and maybe then that'll help. And, you know, I've had, you know, my mum's great, and I've got other people in my life that have helped since then. But yeah, that was a real turning point. And I think a lot of people around me at that point thought that would be the end. You know, anybody that had seen how low I'd got, knew that I'd been an inpatient in the Priory, you know, drugged up in a different way by that point. I was on all sorts of antidepressants, diazepam, you know, Zapaclone, anything that would help. There was a real concern here that this would be it for me, I think. And actually, from that point on, I never considered not being here again. I just had my mindset on getting better. And I think because I get asked so many times when I speak at school, what was it? How did you get better? You know, what did it? And what was your rock bottom? What was your turning point? And I think I don't always like sharing that was it, because I think you don't have to lose somebody that close to you to have a turning point, because that's really demotivating for people, isn't it, that are listening and think. It just needs to be, I think it's just about finding something that's worth living for, something inside. There's a little voice somewhere inside that goes, actually, it's worth just trying it out, isn't it?
Yeah, because I suppose the thing that was, I suppose, the issue was that you didn't feel there was something to live for, and you didn't want to respect your body, and you didn't like yourself, I think, if I may say that. And then you sort of think, well, someone loved me, you know, and I was good enough for them. But you kind of had to lose them to realise that.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have been great if I could have realised all I
if
had
you could
before
have
I lost it?
But you had to sort of go through that journey. So we spoke about, you know, what happened, and you sort of the rock, you know, the rock bottom, which we don't want to talk about, but it is what it is. And then your dad passes. So let's talk about the rebuilding, because you've got to now rebuild this broken soul. You know, you've got to piece yourself back together. So what do you do? What do you do to piece yourself back together?
It was quite a big thing for me to go and speak to some of those friends that had been such good friends, you know, when I was 18, 19, 20. The couple of friends that I'd made at Bupa, you know, I sat down with them, and one of them said to me, "You used to play football, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I loved football. I'd have played it all day, every day if society had allowed."
Yeah.
I loved it. Well, why don't you go and join football? You'll find some people that aren't just trying to push drugs on you, you know, which is what you've got in your current friend circle.
Find another crowd.
Yeah. Find your friends, I think is what she was saying.
Totally.
A bit helpfully. And I did. I joined a football club and started playing football again, and met my wife, who I'm married to today, and a group of friends who are a great group of friends. And I mean, look, it was girls' football, and we went out a lot and we drank, but it was good, wholesome, normal levels of drinking on a weekend.
Yeah. There's a difference. There's a big difference.
Yeah, and I left Bupa because I couldn't bear the kind of shadows that remained from there, which was a shame, because it was a fabulous company to work for, and I'd enjoyed working. I'd met some incredible people. But you had to shed
that skin in a way.
I did, and I couldn't walk in to the reception area where my mum had told me that my dad had passed every morning. I walked in and relived it. So I left. I got bounced around a couple of jobs because I struggled. I was still struggling. It wasn't overnight. It took years.
Yeah.
It took years. You know, I was on such a high dose of antidepressants and sleeping tablets. You know, to reduce those gradually took years. But I knew somewhere inside of me that I wanted to do it. I knew that I was capable of doing something, and I have quite a strong, and I think I've always had, because I've thought about this, is it since I had all those difficulties, or did I feel it even before that? I have a strong sense of service, of wanting to do good, of wanting to make lives better. I know that sounds a bit cliched, but to
Make
help
life
people
better for
and-
others because
and
you've
just to
suffered yourself
spread
and
some joy and some goodness and make the world a better place because there's so much crap, isn't there?
it's like an emotional shift, a shaking up to sort of wake up. This is what you're doing is wrong, and then you were aware enough of yourself to implement changes that just made your life a little bit easier along the way. Like, okay, that's a bit stressful for me. Seeing this thing is a bit stressful. I'm just going to avoid that thing because it's a bit toxic.
Yeah.
And then you gently move that aside, and then, okay, let me just find an easier. And you've got to do that, don't you? Like, you can't deal with everything at the same time. You have to make life easier for yourself. And then you found something you enjoyed, which is like, oh, I like football.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah.
you connect to your old self. These are the things that people can do. Like, what do you like?
Yeah.
What makes you happy? What's a little bit toxic? Who's toxic in your life?
Yeah.
Cut them out, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Avoid.
That's
Have
huge.
to.
You have to.
You have to.
Whether it's on social media or whether it's just in life, in day-to-day stuff.
If they're not lifting you up.
Yeah. If they don't
Out.
energise you or they don't lift you up or they don't make you feel good. I mean, everybody has the odd day, where they have an argument or whatever.
No,
We're not
but that's
talking about
different.
those
That's
things.
different. It's
But,
toxic toxins,
Yeah.
Toxic people, but also toxins, like you say, in that environment,
Yeah.
that reception room or that particular, whatever, road or vibe. You've got to cut it out. It's like a cancer. You've got to get rid of it.
Yeah, and it's just making healthy choices, isn't it, day to day? But it didn't come easy. It took a long time.
Yeah, but you've done extremely well because you've had to yank yourself out of something awful, like sinking sand, and you had to sort of drowning, and you have to, and stay here, So that's another thing because you've got to continue, you've got to just be strong and pioneer forward. But I suppose for anyone listening, what have you learnt about addiction and recovery that other people might not understand,
I don't think I'm the best person to talk about addiction because I look back and I think I took drugs to escape. Was I an addict? I don't think so. I don't think, I think addicts need a different path. And I met addicts along the way. And the support, the similarities, but there's also big differences. I used alcohol and drugs to escape what I was dealing with. And therefore, I needed to sort those things out. And I needed to, look at what it was that was making me feel that way about myself and correct them and correct the internal message and be kind to myself and all those things. And naturally, I didn't have a point where I said, I'm not drinking from tomorrow. I'm not taking another drink from tomorrow. No, it just gradually became less and less because the more I was kind to myself, the more I gave myself credit for the things that I did do to help other people and that I did, perhaps I wasn't all bad, perhaps there was a nice little part of me that could come out. And that, I think that's different, that, gradually I didn't want to drink anymore and I didn't need to. I didn't need to take drugs. I didn't need to drink and life just gradually changed. And what are we 20 years on and it's still evolving. I'm still learning how to be kinder to myself. And
so for someone then in that case who's trying to escape, and they're drinking to escape or whatever, taking drugs to escape, what advice do you have to them based on what you've gone through?
There are other ways to escape, that's not escaping.
There are other ways.
Using those things is just running towards more darkness. It only leads towards that, and it's so temporary. Your fix lasts a couple of hours, if that, and you're the one that's still running around at 7 a.m. trying to get everybody to continue the night out, and most normal people have, gone and got on with their lives, and it's a lonely world. The real escape is to find healthy communities and activities to get involved in where everybody else is battling something, everybody's struggling. For me it was football, but I'm now in other communities, running communities, and I like to try any activity possible. I went open water swimming this year, and there's a whole community of people there to access. And
it's so good,
and
thrilling.
Yeah, and
it's thrilling.
I think there's so much more now, isn't there? You can listen to loads of podcasts, and there's loads of things around nutrition and activities and communities that you can access.
Do you know what? I met this. I'm not going to give away personal details, but I met this woman about 2 years ago or something, and she was quite into all this sort of stuff, and heavy drinker, and we know for sure she's doing drugs and things, but she she started to, you know, speak to me and whatever, and we're talking, and then she's like, well, what's your vice? Come on. What do you do? What do you do? You must do something. Come on. And she would really believe it. You know, I was like, what do you mean? It wasn't, but she was like, what, basically, I assume the question is, what do you do to get this thrill kick? What is it? What drugs of choice or something? You know, and I was like thinking about it. I was like, Genuinely, the answer to that is I love competition and exercise, and especially the competitive thing. I find it thrilling. Even if I'm on my own, I'm competing with myself on that run, walk. That's thrilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding that sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you find a sense of purpose, and I have a few, you know, I have a sense of purpose around my work and my business, and that's a very purpose-driven business, and that, you know, has given me so much. My strongest sense of purpose is being a mum.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
You know, I would give everything else up to be the best mum I could be to my two children. But I think that me balancing things like work and showing them that it's healthy to exercise and all those things is important.
Yes.
So there's that, and then the sense of purpose around health and well-being. I mean, what have we got if we haven't got our well-being? You know, you only have to be someone that goes through a health scare to realise that, that, you know, that is all
I think a lot of people listening are going through their health scares right now. I mean, everyone's getting
nothing else matters at that point, does it? You can get another job.
It's so scary,
You know, you have to have breaks from exercise and all these other things, but you can go back to it, you know, but your health. And so the last few years for me is time has allowed being a mum. It's not easy when they're little ones, is it? But as they're getting a bit older and I've got a bit more time for me, is around nutrition, sleep, you know, and doing the things that just keep me well and hopefully healthy for as long as I can be.
Yeah, I used to not be that bothered with health till I became a mum. And then it's like you worry about if you're not there for them.
Absolutely.
It's all about,
absolutely,
you know, to be there for
them. I was 26, which for some people, when my dad died, I was 26, and some people have lost parents much younger than that.
Yeah.
You know, I was an adult to most people, but actually I was too young. You know, that felt young, and looking back, it feels young. I don't want my children to be only 26. I want them to be well into being a parent themselves,
of
and
course.
an adult and all these things.
So what is your, I mean, we touched on the career in the beginning, but what does your career look like now, and what drives you?
Well, I fell into recruitment, as most people do. Anybody that works in recruitment, if you ask them how they got into it, they'll say they fell into recruitment because it was healthcare. I'd enjoyed working at Bupa. There was always that healthcare side to it. I fell into the world of nursing agencies, which gets quite a lot of bad press because obviously the NHS spends quite a bit of money on nursing agencies. But I got to a point where I realised that actually I could drive this purpose-driven business where we decrease the amount that the NHS is having to spend on agency by building the technology, which we've done, to automate, integrate transactions that mean the cost can come down a lot for the NHS.
The costs have got to come down.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's around...
And the quality up.
Absolutely. The quality. I mean, the nurses and the healthcare professionals that we have, they're the people that you should have on this podcast. They are the most incredible people, and they've been through so much with the pandemic. They always put everybody else first. They're just incredible, and I have this privileged job of getting to work with them and being a part of this long-term sustainable workforce plan that we have in place now for the NHS.
So what's your goal, your ideal career-wise?
I would like the business for Novella to have really changed that landscape, for agencies to have to work in a more innovative way to bring the cost down for the NHS. The NHS needs a flexible workforce. It can't come away from it. It needs it. But to really inspire other agencies to drive that cost down and form part of this workforce plan. But in addition to that, I'm just in the beginning of conversations around setting up a charity with a couple of wonderful people that are on board and going to help, because one thing that we do really well is we connect people with organisations, and there are so many organisations out there in the world that need healthcare professionals. And we have this app that connects all these people together, and we can use that app to connect the thousands of healthcare professionals that we have on our books to charities across the world that access communities that perhaps have no access to healthcare. You know, these are communities that don't have clinics or hospitals, and they need healthcare professionals as volunteers to go and help them set the services up and leave them more self-sustaining.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a wonderful thing to do.
That would be the goal.
Yeah.
So, do you regret your past, let's say, the darker side of what you've had to go through? Or would you do it all again?
No, I mean, it would have been nice if I'd not had to go through those things, or some of those things, to get to where I am. And there are some actions that I took in my darkest moments that hurt other people that I would not do again. But I don't think you can have regrets, because it doesn't serve a purpose anyway. I've met some incredible people. It's given me resilience, determination. It's given me skills that I hope to share with other people, and, you know, maybe even just help one younger person, younger me, get through this life without quite as much of the darkness in it. Then no regrets.
See, it's all good. No regrets. Hear, hear. Jane, thank you for coming on our podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.